Good evening and welcome to tonight's Governing Board meeting. Let the record show all 4 board members are present and we do have quorum. Mrs. Sagata-Jones, do you have any changes or recommendations?
No, not at this time.
Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion passes. At this time, please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just as a quick reminder to everyone, during the last board meeting, people had difficulty understanding some of us, so if we can please make sure to speak into the speaker, move it close, and speak clearly. Thank you. We are at item 3, the consent agenda. Are there any items any board members would like pulled for discussion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We are at item number 4, action items. Mrs. Sagata-Jones.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board. It is recommended the governing board approve changes to the 2019-2020 evaluation process due to school closures. The following changes to the evaluation process are for any employees required to have 2 observations for the 1920 school year that were not completed prior to school closures. Below are the recommendations to the evaluation process. If 2 observations are needed and only 1 has been completed, the administrator will use the first observation data, walkthrough data, informal observation data, and artifacts to complete the summative evaluation for the employee. If there has been no observation, the administrator will use walkthrough data, informal observation data, and artifacts to complete the summative evaluation for the employee. If the employee was in GESD for the 2018-2019 school year and the 2019-2020 final classification rating is lower than the 2018-2019 school year, the employee may use a rating from the 2018-2019 school year. In addition to that, Ms. Valadez has done a survey with our teaching staff and to see if they were in agreement with these choices, and the overall agreement was yes, they were in favor. So Ms. Valadez, do you want to add to that?
I'll just share the data results based on recommendations from legal counsel that we either go back to the teacher evaluation committee, that we survey the teachers, that we make sure we get in their input prior to bringing this forward to the board. The evaluation committee hasn't been in effect for a couple years now, and lots of the people are not here, so it went out in survey format, and it went to the teachers. 430 of the teachers approved the changes to the evaluation process. 10 did not.
Was there any reason given from any of the 10?
The comments for not really giving were, one funny one is the first observation's done first semester, so most of these are done. I've already had my 2. I support the first 2, but not the last option. Like, nope, just go off with the first 2. I already completed mine. I feel this is the most fair. So there was only just 10 comments made on that whole process. And my principal has been fair in the process, in my experience, was one of the comments as well.
Okay.
Do we know if there are a lot of teaching staff that will be impacted by this, or were they, for the most part, were our principals already ahead of the game?
They were everybody had to have at least 1 observation by December 15th. Okay. So everyone had 1. It's really, and then actually lots were already completed prior to going on to spring break. The questionable, there was some concern even just going into it in the whole HR arena from all of us. What about people on support plans? What about people on improvement plans? Those would just carry over to next year. If they were on a support plan, lots of people just kind of got on the support plan. If they were on the improvement plan, they've already either improved, some had already resigned, so the actual final evaluation was not coming into effect for them. Fortunately for us, that not all districts happen to be in that same situation.
Okay.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Do we have a motion to approve item 4A?
I'll make a motion to approve the evaluation process changes for the 2019-2020 school year as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We are moving on to item 4B, pay for performance plan changes due to school closures.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve changes to the 2019-2020 pay for performance plan due to COVID-19 and school closures. The Pay for Performance Committee is recommending that 25% for professional development, professional responsibilities requirement be modified due to school closures for the 2019-2020 school year. Due to the school closures, the recommendation for the 2019-2020 school year is to waive the professional responsibility component only. Teachers who complete the 10 hours of professional development will receive the full 25%. And this is due to, because of the school closures, there could be people that did not get the opportunity to complete that piece. And so we'll honor that piece. Ms. Valadez.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Sagata Jones, also based on recommendations and statute as well. As you recall, last meeting I presented the new pay for performance plan for 2021. Well, in order to make a change to our current pay for performance plan, the recommendation was that it goes back out to a vote and that at least 70% of the teachers approve the recommended change. It went out to a vote as well. 436 approved of the recommended change. 26 did not. And I don't know if you're going to ask, but I have to just tell you, the comments were more, you had a year to do this. I already done mine. It was really not, oh, I don't want it. It was more from people like, well, I got mine done. The others should have gotten theirs done before spring break, kind of, before returning. So really overwhelmingly so was the support. It really just took away that one component, the professional responsibility, where they had to only complete that one activity, but the 10 hours still had to be completed by April 15th. That did not go away.
Are there any questions or discussion?
Well, just out of curiosity, because April 15th was the deadline, that would have been like right when right after we came back from spring break?
We would have been back on March
No, we-
20th.
March 20th.
Remember anymore?
Right, and like an example of a professional responsibility for maybe to attend a board meeting. They could have done it virtually, technically, but if they were going to try to get in a couple there, that would be tricky. Another example is to observe a colleague and write a reflection. If they were going to do that once they returned from break between that time frame and April 15th, they wouldn't have had that opportunity. So if they were going to attend a sporting event or attend some of the students' activities that they weren't expected to be at, they didn't have those opportunities. So that is why just that part of the professional development, professional responsibilities, was the part being recommended that be waived for this 1920 school year, but the professional development remain intact with the 10 hours needing to be completed because the committee felt that still was able to be accomplished by the April 15th deadline, even though school closure was in place.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Do I have a motion to approve item 4B?
I'll move to approve the changes to the 2019-20 pay for performance plan due to the COVID-19 and school closures.
I'll second that.
Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Item 4C, employment of principal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the appointment of Dr. Christina Schaffler as principal of Glendale Landmark School, salary and benefits commensurate with other principals.
Is there any questions, any discussion? Do I have a motion to approve the employment of Dr. Christina Schaffler, item 4C?
I'll move to approve the appointment of Dr. Schaffler as principal of Glendale Landmark for the next school year.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Smith?
Wilson?
Wilson, I'm sorry. Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Congratulations to Dr. Schaffler.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. She is listening. We just can't hear her, but
Too
she's
bad
out
she
there.
can't be.
And item 4D, the 2020-2021 salary placement tables, fringe benefits, and extra duty stipends.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it's recommended the governing board approve the salary placement tables, fringe benefits, and extra duty stipends for the 2021 school year as presented. Administration seeks the governing board's approval of the salary placement schedules, fringe benefits, and extra duty stipends for the 2021 school year. And as you recall, when we came back in, I believe January, we presented those extra duties that it came out of an illegal opinion through the Auditor General that we should be looking every time that we pay something beyond someone's contract, that it comes to governing board approval. So we did an after effect for that. We did that back to the 7 years as recommended. And then moving forward, we'll continue to do that. So you do have in front of you tonight that schedule of list all of those in which teachers or staff can earn those extra duties. And then we will continue to come with you with the names of each of those for each of those positions. Some may be after the fact because some of these, we don't know who's going to do those duties until we approach that time. So that will be what we will continue to do in practice.
I do have a question, and more, not really so much a question, but, and if you've already answered this previously, I apologize. But I've noticed on the extra duty pay that, can you just tell everybody how you arrive at some of these amounts, like
The calculations of each hourly
some
rates.
of them are paid the same, and yet I do believe that some of them are for all year, and others are for a couple of months, but yet they get the same. And so how do you, what are the calculations?
Yes,
for that?
we can, I'll let Dr. Jerry Peterson and Carvaya answer those in specific if there's some. Some of them were just a set amount, and then the others were calculated by the number, perhaps if it was the number in a season, what it would be determined as, how long the season would be, for example, for coaching, as well as some of the other positions were based off an hourly rate or the hourly rate of the employees based in there, and then some of them were a set fee again. If it was a stipend amount of a $7,500, then again, how did we come up with that amount based off the position of that particular person? So if there's particular ones that you want to know, or do you just want an overall, like if there's a...
Actually, on the second page there, when there's a lot that are getting $600, for instance, and I know a lot of that is like soccer coach, softball coach, in which those are just short periods of time. They're not all year. Although I do know that realize that they have games that they have to attend and all. But then at the top, the after-school activities, we have cheer, choir, and chess. I'm not sure chess starts right at the beginning of the year. I'm not sure when that starts. I know choir should, and again, I don't even know if choir is, they have to have 2 performances a year. Is there anything in place for that? And then cheer, I don't think is all year.
Dr.
I could be
Peterson.
wrong.
Madam President, members of the board, Ms. Sagata-Jones explained a lot of it. Some of these amounts, like the ones that are around $600, have been in place for beyond all of us, and they might be due for some evaluation, because I can, sometimes when you have like cross-country coach is at $200, and that's a one-day event, versus a softball coach is at $600, and that's a multi-day coach. So I think there could be due some evaluation on that. But specifically, a couple other things that you mentioned. Same thing with chess. That's kind of the same. Chess, although there's the practice that leads up to that, it's a one-day event versus softball, which is a month-and-a-half event. Some of them you'll see $39.90 versus $26.60. The $26.60 is a number that's based off of the base salary. So whenever the base salary goes up, that hourly rate goes up. So because you approved at a previous board meeting the $40,000 base salary for teachers, a brand new teacher, we then divide that into what it would be like per hour, and that would be $26.60 an hour. So we use that as a hourly rate. $39.90 is half of that, and that's for the planning that goes into that hourly rate. So that's why you'll see those two numbers there for an hourly rate. One's because there's planning that's part of that job duty. But a lot of time, what we're trying to do, and it's probably a multi-year process, is we have tried to make more standardized amounts, given how much time goes into that work. So you'll find us trying to get more to the $26.60 an hour rate, because that seems a little more fair, I guess, to say, because then you can actually hour that out for the work. But I think that's going to have to be part of a program evaluation for this, because like you just pointed out, there are some inconsistencies with time versus how much they're paid for.
And then do they maybe get a raise with every year that they are in that position, so that their expertise is?
That's a really good point, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Currently, that is not part of the process. That you do not get a raise as part of being in the position for more than 1 year. I know that some other districts do either that, or they'll say you almost get like a multi-year, I don't want to say contract, but a multi-year agreement, where if you do this for multiple years, you'll get this amount this year, this amount next year, this amount the following year. So that does happen, and other districts have broached that. And so that is definitely something that should go into that program evaluation.
I have a question, since this has been brought up. Why do we have to approve this today? You know, we've went back and we did the vote, whatever, a few months ago because of legal's advice. And so why do we have to do this at this time, when you said that it would come back to us that, you know, whoever was paid a certain amount? I mean, could that just come back to us like this is what they're getting paid, and then we just approve it instead of approving this at this time, since you said it is a multi-year process to really go through the different things and make sure that it's right? Because what you're saying to me is, you know, that some of these things really need adjusting.
Well, in order to operate for the 2021 school year, we'll need to approve it, because we're not going to make those adjustments. That would go into a program salary. But we want to give you this because some of this work will begin could begin in summer, and then some of it will begin once the school year starts. So that was the intent of bringing it now. You're never going to get all the employees ahead of the time. One, the way board meetings fall, and also the way the scope of the work. We wouldn't bring it until you approve it when they're paid. By presenting it this way, you'll know that if we start, let's say, softball before softball season starts, you already know what that rate is. You just may not know who that employee is at that time. The intent is, we talked with leadership, that we will be asking for them to identify who these people on their campuses may be, But right now with closures is everything, that's a little difficult to do. But once we have, it could be very well, once we know who these people are going to be, then we can bring all those at once, but then you're still going to have some after effects, because it could be when it comes, we're not going to do that. Or you could be at a school closure like we did now, and we did the school closure, so therefore we lost the season of the softball. So that's the reason we would still bring this to you at this time, because we would want you to know what the new rate is based off the $40,000 and what people could begin earning as quickly as the summer prior to we would have that at another board meeting. Mr. Berrigan, did you want to say something?
Madam President, members of the board, I just wanted to clarify the $39.90 is for $26.60 at time and a half. In other words, it's $26.60 plus $13.30 to get us to $39.90. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Okay, is there any further discussion or questions?
I'll make a motion to adopt the 2021 salary placement tables, fringe benefits, and extra duty pay stipends.
Well, I'll second.
Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
I'm going to vote no.
Mrs. Bartels?
Or vote aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, motion passes. Okay, we are moving on to item 5, future meetings and events. Mrs. Sagata Jones?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, you'll see on May 14th, we have listed the ASB political agenda submissions, and we have reviewed those in executive team. You will see our recommendations in the next board update so that you'll have our feedback on that. May 28th, the authorized signatories, we would probably push that to May 28th. We don't believe we'll be ready for that yet. The budget revision will continue. Call for election is non-applicable. The renewal of sole source cooperative and purchasing contracts will remain. Facsimile signatures remains. And then we did tonight take the stipends, the salary schedule, so that would be removed. Then on May 28th, the special meeting would still take place because we'd probably have to bring authorized signatories. And then the study session, my recommendation would be we postpone that if, regarding declining enrollment budget impacts, if we are still in the telephonic type of a board meeting. I think that discussion, we would want as many people, to be able to actually hear that study session. And it's just easier, I think, to hear that when you're inside the boardroom than sometimes telephonically or remotely. So that would be my recommendation.
Are there any questions, any additions? Any discussion?
Well, I had 3 things that I'd like to bring back to us. One, the call to the public. I know there's the Attorney General's opinion on that, but I think we as a board should have a conversation about that. I'd also, and this maybe can be done in a board update, but how are parents being reached out as to how to help their kids under the circumstances right now? But then the last item, I think collectively we all need to be having a conversation so that we're all aware of what's possibly happening in preparation for next year, because it's still such an unknown. Are we planning for worst case scenario? How are we doing that? How many people are we having part of that, so that, because this is such an unknown. I think sometimes more people, this is not where we want to isolate right now.
I think we can put those in board updates.
Okay.
Is there anything else anyone would like to add or discuss? Okay, we are at item 6, summary of current events. Mrs. Sagata Jones.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, just a lot of things happening. Still with our food distribution, very proud of that. That's still going on at 17 sites and 17 bus stops. You're averaging, we saw anywhere at one time 12,000 down to about 7,000 as that we're feeding a day. A little decrease in the last week. We contribute that to heat. We also know that we've had some increase, some days where they were really high, and that's when we do the Chromebook distribution. That was a high date for us. And then also when we do additional packets for students, hard copies is a high date for us. But the only thing we can contribute to right now is perhaps the heat. It's getting warmer. So we'll continue to monitor that, but still we're, well over 6,000 meals, a day being prepared. So that continues, and we're happy to do that. Our community needs that. Also, we continued with the food distribution from St. Mary's Partnership, and we did that 2 weeks ago, and then again on Tuesday, April 28th, we'll do that food distribution. We changed the time from 9 to 10:30 because of heat. We anticipate the temperatures are going to be hotter. Last time we did it 2 weeks ago, we prepared over 250 food boxes for the community, and we still had cars waiting in line for food. So we'll continue to do that for the community. Also, I just want to publicly thank our librarian workers. It was National Librarian Workers Day this past week, and also, which was Tuesday, and then also yesterday was our administrative professionals, so we want to thank them. And then we have quite a few celebrations coming up as well for our staffs, but the next one would be May 1st, and that's the Lunch Heroes. And so we're excited about launching that. We've created this wonderful banner to post on our fences to let our lunch workers know how much we appreciate them. Their lives probably have changed tremendously as well, and so they're doing a remarkable job. So thank you to them. And then just again, as you saw when you come in, we're continuing with some of those projects that we had scheduled for remodel. Because we don't have a staff here, we figured we could try, if we could, with contractors that are able to work, we would get some of those things done while staff is not here, so it'd be less disruption when staff does return. So fortunately, our contractors were able to still work, most of them, and so you are seeing some of that take place across the district. So it's helped with getting all the carpets into the K-3 classrooms, so that will be, still going on, as well as some of the things that had to be taken care of, remodels here, as well as some inefficiencies we had that we're dealing with here as well. So that continues. But again, just we have a timeline that tentative timeline we've shared with our virtual meetings with our principals yesterday or Tuesday. Depending on what comes out of the Governor Ducey's office, if we're going to transition back into work or not, and what that looks like for us. So we did a timeline beginning in the first week of May and through the first 3 weeks of May, where we will start to have, if possible, teachers to come back and still following all the guidelines recommended by the governor, so that they can dismantle classrooms and get their things ready for the next school year, or those that are leaving GSD, they can get their things, and the following week have an opportunity for our students to curbside. This would be curbside service. They would be able to return some of the belongings that they have, such as whether if they have an instrument or if they have library books, that would be returned. And then the following week, when we finish school with instruction, then we would do the return of the Chromebooks. Everything would be by curbside for that. So that's the tentative 3-week schedule in May, what we're doing. Of course, we'll know more. My understanding I did listen to the press conference yesterday from the governor. We'll know more early next week, hopefully, and then we can make some decisions about really starting to do the final end of the year closure and how can we get teachers in and students things back that they have. Yeah. And so that's the plan that we have right now for that. But just so you know, teachers are working extremely hard. They have some great video lessons going on out there. Administrators still doing virtual staff meetings and doing what they need to do. They were in collaborative team time with Dr. Sharon Kramer today through Google Classrooms or Hangouts, so they were doing that. We continue to meet with the administration through virtual. HR has the nifty little thing. We can put it in the board update. We're doing virtual job fairs across the nation. There's only 3 districts in Arizona that participate, and we are one of those. So we had virtual job fair going on today, and a lot of people were in the chat wanting to look at jobs in GSD. Jackie Ryan is working remotely today and was texting Debbie saying, can you pick up some chats? There's some people with some on the chat that I have a waiting list. Can you jump in and do that? So we're all been doing that. So that's new for us. It's pretty cool little tool there that we're able to do it. She was speaking to someone when I walked in today from North Dakota or South Dakota, but it's exciting for us. So we are still continuing to run the organization to the best that we can and navigate through this during these, these times. But I can't thank people enough for their commitment to GSD and the community. Again, the parents have been remarkable. They've, whenever we see them out, they've been very supportive as well. So it's just challenging times, but definitely still trying to provide the best we can for our students and our community. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Smith.
I saw a list earlier this week of our Teachers of the Year that were announced, and so I would like to just congratulate all of our Teachers of the Year. And as Ms. Sagata-Jones says, they are working hard. I know that my daughter is getting daily lessons from all her teachers, and so I'm sure that others are getting their daily lessons, and I appreciate all the hard work that they are doing from their homes. And then, again, I just want to thank the district for the community outreach, that they're doing, and it's a lot of work, for all of our sites, and doing food and packets, just copying it's a lot of work, and I'm just grateful for everyone just hanging in there through this weird time.
Thank you, Mrs. Bartels.
I have one. I'm grateful that my kids are all grown because it makes it a little bit easier. But I do watch our social media pages and see all of the great things that our teachers are doing, putting lessons on there, giving them ideas of how to continue practicing things they were already doing in class. I also want to congratulate our teachers. It's sad that we don't get to do it in person this year, but I'm sure
We will.
figure out a way to do that.
We'll have a big hoopla when everybody returns.
But I just want to remind people to please, 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 take this seriously. Keep the distance. If you go out, wear a mask, wash your hands often, often, often. We just need to be a little bit more cognizant of that when we're out in public.
Thank you. Mrs. Wilson?
Just, again, a big thank you to everyone involved in all you're doing for our kids. It's amazing how you've been so creative in doing your job and reaching out to the kids, teachers included, and everybody. There's just too many people that are involved, and I couldn't really name everybody. But just know that the community, we all just really appreciate everything you're doing. I just wanted really quick to say congratulations to Christina, and it's too bad she's not here, but we all are glad that you got the appointment. And to all our Teachers of the Year, and yes, we will celebrate at some point. So.
Thank you. I'd like to tag on to what everyone else said. Thank you to the Teachers of the Year and to all of our teachers who are working very hard every day. To Liz Powell and Brittany, they keep everything running here at the district office, and thank you to all of our admin throughout the district. Thank you, Mrs. Sagata-Jones, and to your whole team. We see how hard you all are working, and it's not a 9-to-5 job, and we know that 9 to 5 is probably pretty laughable, because I know we've seen you out there at 5 a.m. and as late as midnight, so thank you. To Dr. Christy Schaffler, congratulations. We know that that is well earned, and we're very proud to have you as a principal at Landmark. And that's all I have. At this time, we have legal counsel here if anybody has any questions for action items 9. Does anyone have any legal questions that they'd like to discuss? Because if there aren't any legal questions, we don't have to go into executive session.
We need to go. Can we read each item and see if that's... So at this time, the governing board would consider voting to recess the regular meeting or to convene to executive session for the following purpose. In accordance with ARS 38431 3A 0.3A3 and ARS 38-131-03A7 for the purpose of discussion and/or consultation for legal advice with the attorney of the public body for the item 9A Catholic Charities Head Start lease agreement on this meeting agenda in accordance with ARS 38-431-03 and ARS 38-431-03A7 for the purpose of discussion and/or consultation for legal advice with the attorney of the public body for item 9B, Maryland Unit 13 and Alice Unit 18 farm lease agreements on this meeting agenda, and in accordance with ARS 38-431-03A3 for the purpose of discussion and/or consultation for legal advice with the attorney of the public body for items 9C, Sunset Vista Utility Easement on the meeting agenda, and in accordance with ARS 38-431-03A3 for the purpose of a discussion and/or consultation for legal advice with the attorney of the public body for item 9D, Coyote Ridge Cell Tower option and easement agreement on the meeting agenda. Those would be the reasons you would want to consider voting for a recess to go in to convene executive session.
I do have a question, but I don't know that we have to go in executive session for it.
You can pose the question, and then legal counsel will tell us whether we need to convene the meeting and go to legal counsel.
On B, I believe it was the farm lease agreement. I don't have it up right now. One was $10 and one was $1 and like A, or for the Head Start on A. Was there a reason why one was 10 and one was $1?
Yeah, so the question is being asked on the amount charging for each lease. So do we?
So both amounts, the $10 amount and the $1 amount, are nominal values.
Right.
I suspect that it just was the basis of the forms that were used, would be my guess. But my partner, Laura Sever-Blanco, is the one who drafted. She's the real estate specialist in our office that works with your district. She's available telephonically if you want to move into exec to answer that more specifically. But I suspect that because both are nominal values, that there has to be some amount pulled, and my guess is it's just the forms that she was using. So.
Yeah, I just think it should be consistent in the future instead of different amounts, even though they are nominal.
Mr. Berrigan?
Madam President, members of the board, I think as our legal counsel has advised, potentially asking the specific questions to legal counsel, what I would say is when you look at the contract and when you look at the investment that's also being made, there's a mutual benefit that the district is receiving as a result of these agreements. And so for those purposes, we felt that that was appropriate for those dollar amounts.
Did you want to discuss this further? We can go into executive session.
No, not really.
Did anybody else have any legal questions about anything? So
I'll read the action items and you'll vote.
Okay, so for going executive session, we are at action item A, 9A. Mrs. Sagata-Jones.
Catholic Charities Head Start lease agreement is recommended the governing board approve the Catholic Charities Head Start lease agreement as presented.
I'll move to approve the Catholic Charities Head Start lease agreement as presented.
I'll second.
I have a question. Is the Catholic Charities who's already doing it at this time over there at Sign?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
And then when I looked at the map, it looks like it's still in the same location. Are they moving? They're not moving their physical area where they're doing it, are they?
They're putting a modular, Mr. Berrigan.
Madam President, members of the board, if you look at the exhibits, the idea is really to put a new modular building on that property and start construction here. I would imagine at some point after the board approves of this agreement so that they could have a new facility.
What's going on with the current facility that's on the property?
They're expanding.
That's correct.
It's what?
They're expanding.
Oh, they're just expanding.
They're just expanding, putting a new module on there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Madam President, members of the governing board, I texted my partner, Laura Sever-Blanco, and she indicated that it was just a use of different forms, which is the differential between the values.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
No problem. Sorry to interrupt.
Does anybody else have any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Action item 9B.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board. Maryland Unit 13 and Alice Unit 18 farm lease agreements. It is recommended the governing board approve Maryland Unit 13 and Alice Unit 18 farm lease agreements as presented.
Is there any questions or discussion? Can I get a motion to approve item 9B?
I make a motion to approve the Maryland Unit 13 and Alice Unit 18 farm lease agreement as presented.
I'll second.
Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, and the motion passes. We are at item 9C.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Sunset Vista Utility Easement. It is recommended the governing board approve the Sunset Vista Utility Easement as presented.
Any questions or discussion? Can I get a motion to approve item 9C?
I'll make a motion to approve the Sunset Vista utility easement as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. And we are now at item 9D.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Coyote Ridge Cell Tower Option and Easement Agreement is recommended the governing board approve the Coyote Ridge Cell Tower Option and Easement Agreement as presented.
Any discussion or questions? Can I get a motion to approve item 9D?
I'll make a motion to approve the Coyote Ridge Cell Tower option and easement agreement as presented.
I'll second.
Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. We are at the end of our meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a wonderful evening.